Laila Sharma had always been an observer rather than a participant.
Shall we join the others?
At 28, she had grown accustomed to blending into the background, letting life pass by in muted shades while others moved in vivid colors. Tonight, she found herself sitting alone at the reception of the Grand Sterling Hotel, its marble floors gleaming under golden chandeliers, its walls adorned with modern art and delicate floral arrangements. The air was a blend of expensive perfume and the faint scent of hors d'oeuvres. She sipped her champagne quietly, her eyes scanning the crowd. Couples laughed and exchanged greetings. Business associates discussed deals with eager intensity, and waiters glided across the room carrying trays of delicate canapés. Yet Laila felt completely invisible, a ghost among the laughter and chatter. It had been her own decision to attend the corporate gala alone. She had long avoided large social gatherings, preferring the comfort of solitude, yet tonight her curiosity had won. She was new to the city and had wanted a glimpse into the world she had only ever observed from a distance, a world of power, elegance, and wealth that seemed simultaneously thrilling and intimidating. As she adjusted the delicate strap of her evening gown, she noticed the whispers and glances from the crowd. Some seemed to admire her quiet elegance, while others barely acknowledged her presence. Laila was used to fading into the background. It was comfortable, safe, and predictable. But something in her heart whispered that this night might be different. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft hum of a conversation nearby. She turned slightly and caught sight of a man leaning casually against a column, speaking quietly to a friend. His presence was commanding, yet understated, as if he were aware of every nuance in the room without demanding attention. Laila couldn't help but notice the sharp cut of his suit, the intensity of his gaze, and the faint curve of a smile that suggested he understood far more than he let on. Then, without warning, she felt a soft whisper near her ear. "You don't belong here, but maybe you should." Laila's heart skipped a beat. She turned her head, startled, but saw no one immediately next to her. The voice was deep, warm, and unmistakably confident, yet impossible to place. I'm sorry," she murmured, unsure if she had imagined it. A low chuckle followed. "I said, you don't belong here, and yet somehow you do. That contradiction is fascinating." Laila looked around, trying to locate the source. Her gaze fell on the man she had noticed earlier, the one leaning against the column. His eyes were fixed on her now, intense, piercing, as if he could see not just her presence, but the thoughts she hadn't spoken aloud. Are you speaking to me?" she asked, her voice a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. He stepped closer, his movements deliberate, effortless. "Yes," he said, his voice low and steady. "Forgive me for the intrusion, but I couldn't help noticing. You're different from the others here. Observant, quiet, yet not timid. That combination is rare." Laila felt a strange mix of intrigue and caution. She was used to being invisible, yet this stranger had singled her out with an intensity that made her pulse race. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because," he replied, leaning slightly closer so his words brushed against her ear once more. "People like you are often underestimated, and underestimated people are fascinating." Her breath caught. There was something magnetic about him, something that drew her in without explanation. She had spent years blending into the shadows, watching others live the lives she had only dreamed of, and now, in this single whisper, she felt seen in a way that was entirely new and unsettling. The stranger's gaze was unwavering. His dark eyes, framed by a sharp jawline and perfectly groomed hair, held a curiosity that mirrored her own. He extended a hand slightly. "I'm Arjun Mehra," he said simply. "And you are?" Laila hesitated. Her instincts told her to retreat, to return to the safety of her solitary corner, yet something about his presence was magnetic. Laila Sharma," she replied, finally accepting his offered acknowledgement without shaking his hand. Arjun smiled faintly, a subtle expression that suggested he found amusement in her hesitation. Lila, he repeated softly. A beautiful name for someone who doesn't even know the effect she has on the room yet. Her cheeks warmed. She had never been the center of attention, let alone someone who drew admiration in a room full of influential people. The words left her stunned, and for a moment, she simply stared, unable to articulate a response. "I'm sorry," she said finally, regaining her composure. "But I think you might be mistaken. I don't belong in places like this." Arjun tilted his head, regarding her carefully. "Belonging isn't always about circumstance," he said quietly. "Sometimes it's about recognizing your own potential and stepping into it. You're here, aren't you? Even if reluctantly." She looked around the room at the polished floors, the glittering chandeliers, the guests in their elegant attire. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps she did belong here, if only because she had chosen to step into a space that once intimidated her. The two of them stood in a delicate silence, the ambient noise of the reception fading into the background. For Lila, the encounter felt surreal. A stranger, a whisper, a moment of connection that defied logic, yet resonated with a profound sense of recognition. I suppose I am here," she admitted softly. Arjun's lips curved into a subtle smile. "Good, that's the first step." He stepped back slightly, giving her space while maintaining a quiet intensity that made it impossible to look away. Lila realized she had been holding her breath, and she exhaled slowly, trying to process the emotions coursing through her. Intrigue, apprehension, curiosity, and something else, a spark she had not felt in years. "Would you like to join me for a drink?" he asked, his tone casual but deliberate. Lila hesitated. Her instincts urged caution, yet her curiosity, already piqued by the whisper and his attention, overcame her hesitation. I suppose I could," she replied. As they moved toward the bar together, the crowd seemed to fade into the background. The glittering reception, the laughter, the clinking glasses, all became secondary to the presence of the stranger at her side. Arjun guided her through the maze of guests with ease, introducing her to a few acquaintances with gentle confidence, always maintaining a subtle focus on her. It was as if he had claimed a small space for her in this world, carving out a moment of safety amid the chaos. At the bar, they ordered drinks. Arjun's eyes remained fixed on her, studying her with a combination of curiosity and admiration that made her heart beat faster. "You're not like anyone I've met," he said softly, leaning slightly closer. "There's a quiet strength in you, something others overlook until it becomes impossible to ignore." Lila's hands trembled slightly as she held her glass. I'm not sure what to say," she admitted. "Then don't say anything," he replied gently. "Just be present." "That's enough for now." In that moment, Lila realized that this encounter was unlike any she had ever experienced. A whisper from a stranger had left her stunned. Yes, but more than that, it had awakened a curiosity, a sense of possibility, and a quiet thrill that made her feel alive in a way she had long forgotten. As the reception continued around them, the crowd's laughter, the music, and the chatter became a backdrop to a connection she could not yet name. The stranger had recognized her presence, her potential, and something deeper within her, leaving her both exhilarated and unsettled. And as they stood together at the edge of the room, sharing a quiet drink and a conversation filled with subtle intrigue, Lila understood one undeniable truth. Her life had just shifted in a way she could not yet fully comprehend. A single whisper, a single word, and a stranger's gaze had shattered the walls she had built around herself. And for the first time in years, she felt the possibility of a life far richer than she had ever imagined. The soft hum of the reception faded into the background as Lila and Arjun moved through the crowd. There was something magnetic about him, not just his presence, but the way he observed the world, as if nothing escaped his notice. Each subtle gesture, each glint of curiosity in his eyes, made Lila's heart race. They found a quieter corner, away from the chatter and laughter, where they could finally talk without interruption. Lila clutched her glass tightly, unsure if the fluttering in her chest was anticipation, fear, or excitement. "Why me?" she asked suddenly, her voice almost a whisper. "Why approach me? I'm not exactly someone people notice." Arjun's eyes softened, though they held that same intense focus that had unsettled her earlier. "Because you are the opposite of what everyone else sees. You sit quietly, observing, noticing things others in. Or you are authentic, not performative. That's rare, and it drew me to you." Lila blinked, startled by his words. Most people overlooked her completely. Even friends she had made over the years often assumed she had little to offer. Yet this stranger saw her, not just her presence but her essence. "Are you always this direct?" she asked, a mixture of nervousness and amusement in her tone. Arjun chuckled softly. "Only when it matters. Life is too short for pretense." For a moment, silence settled between them, a comfortable, charged silence that carried the weight of unspoken thoughts. Lila realized how rarely she had experienced such a tension that felt genuine rather than performative. "So, who are you really?" she asked finally, curiosity getting the better of her. "You seem important. Everyone else here seems to know you, yet I barely know your name." Arjun's eyes flickered with something she couldn't quite place, a shadow of a secret perhaps, or a carefully guarded truth. "I'm someone who observes," he said vaguely, though the faint curve of a smile suggested he was holding back more than he revealed. Lila tilted her head, sensing layers beneath his words. "That doesn't answer the question," she pressed gently. "You're not just observing, are you?" He studied her for a long moment, as if weighing how much to disclose. Then he spoke, low and deliberate. "You're sharp. You notice things most people don't. Perhaps one day I'll tell you everything. But for now, know this. I'm not here by chance, and neither are you." Her pulse quickened. The ambiguity in his words, the hint of something deeper, left her both intrigued and cautious. "What do you mean?" she asked softly, though she feared she already knew the answer, or at least that she wanted to know. Arjun's gaze was unwavering. "Life is filled with coincidences, but not everything is coincidence. Some meeting, some encounters are meant to awaken something within us. Tonight, that awakening is for you." Lila's mind raced. He spoke in riddles, yet each word seemed to resonate with an inexplicable truth. She had spent years observing the world from the edges, and now here was a man who seemed to see her potential before she did. "Potential for what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "For realization," he replied simply. "To understand who you truly are, and who you could become." His words, cryptic though they were, carried weight. Lila felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as if a door, long closed and forgotten, had been nudged open just enough to let in a sliver of light. Over the next hour, their conversation flowed naturally, meandering between seemingly mundane topics and subtle philosophical reflections. Arjun asked about her background, her ambitions, her fears, and listened with an attentiveness that left her feeling uncommonly valued. She spoke of her modest upbringing, the challenges she had faced, and her quiet determination to carve a meaningful life, despite the odds. For the first time, she did not feel judged, belittled, or dismissed. She felt understood. Arjun nodded thoughtfully. "You've built strength quietly, without fanfare. That strength is rare, and it will serve you well. But there are things you must learn, experiences you must face, before you can fully realize it." "What kinds of things?" Lila asked, curiosity mingling with unease. "Challenges," he said, his tone calm but unwavering. "Opportunities to step beyond the boundaries you've known, to confront fears, to recognize your own power." Not everyone is ready for them, but you are. Her heart pounded. The encounter was thrilling, yet it carried an undercurrent of danger, or at least uncertainty. There was something in his voice that suggested secrets, decisions, and a life far removed from her own quiet existence. "I don't understand," she admitted, the words barely forming. "Why me? Why now?" Arjun leaned closer, his voice a gentle whisper, almost imperceptible over the hum of the gala. "Because you are ready to see, and once you do, nothing will be the same again." Lila's mind whirled. The stranger had entered her life with a single whisper, yet already he had unsettled her in ways she could not explain. There was a promise in his words, a promise of transformation, of awakening, of something beyond the ordinary. Yet alongside the intrigue, there was hesitation. She had spent her life avoiding risks, staying safe in the shadows. This man, with his commanding presence and enigmatic manner, was asking her to step into light she had never known, and perhaps into a world she was unprepared to face. For a long moment, they stood in silence, observing the gala together yet apart from it, connected by something intangible yet undeniable. The noise of the party, the chatter of guests, the clinking of glasses, it all seemed to fade away. "Are you going to help me?" Lila asked finally, her voice trembling with anticipation and fear. Arjun's gaze softened, and for the first time, there was an unguarded warmth in his expression. "If you allow me," he said simply. "But the journey is yours, Lila. I can guide, I can challenge, I can open doors, but you must walk through them yourself." Her pulse quickened. The stranger had offered her a choice, an invitation to step beyond the confines of her known world, to embrace uncertainty and potential, and something deep within her whispered, "Yes, this is the path you've been waiting for." The night continued, but Lila no longer felt like an observer. With Arjun by her side, she felt a flicker of courage she had never known, a glimmer of possibility she had only dreamed of. The whisper that had stunned her earlier sparked something profound: curiosity, awareness, and the undeniable realization that her life was on the brink of transformation. By the time the gala began to wind down, Lila's perspective had shifted. The room that had once seemed intimidating now felt like the first step into a world she could inhabit, explore, and perhaps even master. And standing beside her, the stranger whose words had unsettled and inspired her, Lila knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge her, awaken her, and change her life forever. The following days felt surreal for Lila Sharma. The memory of the whisper, the stranger, and his enigmatic words lingered in her mind like an echo she couldn't shake. Every time she recalled Arjun's gaze, the warmth of his tone, or the subtle confidence with which he spoke, her pulse quickened. The ordinary rhythm of her life, the commute to work, the quiet evenings alone, suddenly seemed muted, as if her world had been split into before and after that night. At her office, she found herself distracted. Tasks that normally required her full attention now felt like background noise. Her mind wandered to Arjun, to his words, to the subtle invitation embedded in that whispered sentence. "Once you see, nothing will be the same again." Lila had always been cautious, hesitant to step outside her comfort zone. Yet a small, insistent voice inside her urged her to embrace the unknown. Could she trust the stranger? Could she allow herself to be guided into a world so far removed from the life she had known? The next evening, as she returned home from work, she found a small, elegantly wrapped envelope waiting on her doorstep. The handwriting was unfamiliar, precise, and elegant. Curiosity overtook caution, and she tore it open. Inside was a single card with minimal text. "Lila, your presence tonight is requested at the Sterling Hotel. Private lounge, 8 p.m. Trust the journey. Ah." Her hands trembled as she read the words. It was him, Arjun. The handwriting, the initials, it could be no one else. Her heart pounded in anticipation and fear. She hesitated, weighing the safety of her ordinary life against the thrill of the unknown. Finally, driven by curiosity and a sense of inevitability, she decided to go. She dressed carefully, choosing a gown that balanced elegance with simplicity, her hair falling naturally around her shoulders. The drive to Sterling Hotel was quiet. Lila's mind raced with questions, doubts, and unspoken expectations. Upon arrival, the receptionist greeted her politely and directed her to the private lounge. She stepped inside, and the soft lighting immediately set her nerves at ease. There, seated by a window overlooking the city lights, was Arjun. He looked up as she entered, and a small approving smile graced his lips. "You came," he said, rising to greet her. His tone was warm, but his gaze was penetrating, as if measuring her readiness. "I did," she replied, trying to steady her voice. I wanted to understand what this is about." Arjun gestured to a pair of chairs near a small table. "Sit. Tonight is not about explanations. It's about possibilities. You are here because you are ready to step into a world you have only glimpsed, a world that challenges you, awakens you, and shows you what you are capable of." Lila sank into the chair, her hands folded in her lap. She studied him carefully. Arjun's presence was commanding yet reassuring, intimidating yet comforting. He had a way of making her feel seen without being overwhelming. "You speak in riddles," she said softly, a hint of frustration in her tone. "Why can't you just tell me what this is?" "Because some truths can only be experienced," he replied evenly. "They cannot be explained, only lived. Tonight you will take the first step." Her curiosity was piqued, overriding her caution. "And if I'm not ready?" she asked, half joking, half serious. "You are," he said simply. "Even doubt is part of readiness. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Lila. It's moving forward despite it." A silence fell over them, charged with anticipation. Lila realized that she had never encountered anyone who spoke with such clarity, who demanded honesty without aggression, and who saw beyond surface appearances. Arjun was not just a stranger. He was a catalyst, a guide, someone who could challenge her in ways she had never imagined. "Where do we start?" she asked finally, a hint of resolve entering her voice. "Outside this room," he said, standing and offering his hand. "We start with experience. Observation is one thing, but immersion is another. Tonight, you will see what lies beyond the edges of your world." Lila hesitated for only a moment before taking his hand. The warmth of his grip and the confidence it conveyed gave her a surprising sense of security. She felt a spark of excitement she hadn't known in years, an intoxicating mixture of anticipation and courage. They exited the lounge, moving through the quiet corridors of the hotel until they reached a discreet service elevator. Arjun pressed the button for the rooftop terrace, and the doors opened to a private view of the city skyline twinkling under the night sky. "This," he said softly, "is only the beginning." Lila inhaled deeply. The view was breathtaking, the city lights stretching endlessly before her, each one representing lives, choices, and opportunities. For the first time, she realized how small her world had been, how limited her perception, and yet she felt a thrill, a sense that everything she had known was merely a prelude to what could be. Arjun stepped closer, his presence both grounding and exhilarating. "Tonight you'll witness something few ever do," he said. "But it is not the spectacle that matters. It is the realization within you. Are you ready?" Lila nodded, her heart pounding. "I think I am." He extended his hand, and as she took it, she felt a surge of anticipation, as though the city itself were conspiring to thrust her into a world of possibilities. The night air was crisp, filled with the subtle hum of distant traffic and the soft rustle of leaves. And in that quiet, charged space, Lila felt the stirrings of transformation. "Do not fear the unknown," Arjun whispered. "Embrace it. Step forward. Tonight, nothing will be the same." Her pulse quickened. The whisper that had stunned her at the reception now seemed amplified, a promise, a challenge, and a call to action. She had spent years observing, surviving, and blending into the background. Tonight she would begin to step into the light. As the city sprawled beneath them, Lila realized that this was more than an evening, more than a moment. It was an invitation to change, to grow, and to awaken to a life she had only glimpsed in dreams. And standing beside her, Arjun remained a constant presence, mysterious, compelling, and undeniably transformative. For the first time in her life, Lila felt fully alive, aware that one choice, one step, could alter the course of everything. The whisper, the invitation, the stranger, each had brought her to this point. And now, as she gazed at the endless city lights, she understood that her life was about to change forever. The private rooftop of the Sterling Hotel felt like a different world, suspended between the bustling city below and the endless night sky above. Lila Sharma stood beside Arjun Mehra, the city lights reflecting in her eyes as anticipation, excitement, and trepidation coursed through her. She had never experienced anything like this, a moment of intimacy and mystery charged with the promise. Sea of change. Arjun studied her carefully, as though measuring not just her presence but her resolve. Before we proceed, there's something you need to understand, he said quietly. This journey isn't about comfort, it's about growth. There will be moments that challenge you, that make you question yourself. If you falter, that's okay. What matters is whether you rise. Lila felt a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. She had spent her life avoiding risks, staying safe in the shadows. Yet something in Arjun's gaze, in the steady way he spoke, made her feel she could trust him, and more importantly, herself. What kind of challenges? She asked, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. Arjun's lips curved into a faint smile. Challenges that reveal your true self, opportunities disguised as tests, choices that define the person you are and the person you could become. She nodded slowly, understanding that this was not just a game or a casual encounter. This was a deliberate, carefully constructed path toward transformation. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so that only she could hear. Lila, I need to be honest. I'm not merely a stranger who noticed you at a reception. I am someone who believes in the potential of those underestimated by the world. And you have extraordinary potential. But extraordinary potential comes with extraordinary trials. Her pulse quickened. She had expected mystery, perhaps even intrigue, but the weight of his confession startled her. Trials? She repeated softly. Like what? Arjun's gaze held hers. You'll see. Not everything can be explained in words. Experience will teach you what words cannot. But I promise you will emerge stronger, wiser, and more yourself than ever before. For a moment, the silence stretched, filled with tension and the subtle hum of the city below. Lila realized that she was standing on the edge of something significant, a threshold between the life she knew and the life that awaited her. Are you sure I can handle it? She asked quietly. I believe you can, Arjun replied, his tone firm yet gentle. Doubt is natural. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Lila. It's choosing to move forward despite it. A small smile tugged at her lips. His words, so deliberate and measured, resonated deeply. She had spent years doubting herself, questioning her worth, and retreating from challenges. And yet, here she was, poised to take the first step into a world she had only glimpsed in dreams. Arjun extended his hand. Come, he said simply. They moved across the rooftop to a more secluded section where a sleek black car awaited. The windows were tinted, the interior dimly lit with ambient lights. Lila hesitated for a moment, the familiar instinct to retreat surfacing, but Arjun's steady presence reassured her. She stepped inside. The drive was silent at first, the hum of the engine filling the space. Lila's mind raced, her thoughts a mix of excitement and fear. Finally she spoke. Where are we going? You'll see, Arjun replied enigmatically. Trust the process. Trust yourself. After a short drive, they arrived at a location Lila could scarcely have imagined, a private, state-of-the-art training facility hidden in the heart of the city. Inside, the environment was designed for learning, challenge, and growth. A mix of physical and mental exercises, simulations, and immersive experiences. Lila's eyes widened. "What is this place?" she asked, disbelief mingling with awe. Arjun's lips curved into a subtle smile. "This is where potential meets opportunity. This is where you will confront limits, face fears, and discover capabilities you didn't know you had. Welcome to your first trial." For the next few hours, Lila engaged in exercises that tested not only her physical agility, but her problem-solving skills, emotional resilience, and ability to think under pressure. Arjun guided her, observed her, and occasionally offered hints or challenges designed to push her beyond self-imposed boundaries. Each task was demanding, each scenario unfamiliar. She stumbled, hesitated, and questioned herself, but Arjun's steady presence reminded her that mistakes were part of learning. With each small victory, her confidence grew. Her heart pounded, her muscles ached, but she felt alive in a way she had never experienced. At one point, during a particularly challenging exercise that required her to navigate a complex simulation of a high-stakes negotiation, Lila felt her frustration boiling over. "I can't do this," she exclaimed, tears threatening to spill. Arjun approached, his expression calm. "You can. You're doubting because you've never been pushed this way before. Strength isn't revealed in comfort, it's revealed in adversity. Take a deep breath. Focus. You know more than you think." She inhaled deeply, letting his words anchor her. Slowly, deliberately, she recalibrated her approach and succeeded where she had initially failed. The triumph was exhilarating. For the first time, she realized that failure was not the end, but a step toward mastery. As the night progressed, Lila began to understand the magnitude of what Arjun had introduced her to. This was not mere mentorship or guidance. It was a deliberate, transformative journey designed to reveal her potential, challenge her limitations, and awaken a strength she had never recognized within herself. At the end of the session, they returned to the rooftop, the city lights sparkling below. Lila's body was exhausted, but her mind was alight with exhilaration and newfound confidence. She turned to Arjun, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't think I could do it," she admitted, "but I did." He smiled, a rare warmth softening his intense features. "And that, Lila, is just the beginning. Potential is nothing without action. You have taken the first step, confronted your fear, and emerged stronger. Now you know what you're capable of." Lila's chest swelled with pride and relief. For the first time, she recognized a fundamental truth. She was stronger, braver, and more capable than she had ever believed. And the man who had guided her through this first trial, Arjun, was not merely a stranger. He was a mentor, a catalyst, someone who saw her potential even when she could not. As the night deepened, the city's lights stretching endlessly below, Lila realized that her journey was far from over. Challenges awaited, secrets would be revealed, and her path would be tested again and again. Yet for the first time in her life, she felt ready. She had taken the first step into a world that demanded courage, intelligence, and resilience, and she had emerged triumphant. Arjun's presence beside her was steady, reassuring, yet filled with the promise of the unknown. "Rest now," he said quietly. "Tomorrow brings the next challenge, and with it, another opportunity to discover who you are." Lila gazed at the horizon, feeling a sense of exhilaration and anticipation. The whisper at the reception, the mysterious invitation, the trials she had faced tonight, it all pointed to one undeniable truth. Her life was changing, irrevocably and profoundly, and she was ready to embrace it. The first rays of dawn filtered through the windows of the Sterling Hotel, casting a soft glow over the city. Lila Sharma sat on the rooftop, her mind still racing from the previous night's trials. Her body ached, a reminder of the physical challenges she had overcome, but her spirit felt invigorated, awakened, and unshakably alive. She had never imagined that one evening, a whisper, an invitation, could alter the trajectory of her life so profoundly. The quiet, reserved girl who had blended into the background for years was now standing at the threshold of a new reality, one that demanded courage, decisiveness, and self-belief. Arjun Mehra appeared beside her without a sound, as if materializing from the morning air itself. He was calm, his expression unreadable yet reassuring. "Good morning," he said quietly. "You slept?" Lila shook her head with a small smile. "I didn't," she admitted. "My mind has been racing." He nodded knowingly. "That is to be expected. Transformation begins with awareness, and awareness often comes with discomfort. But discomfort is a signal that growth is occurring." Lila studied him, marveling at the quiet authority he carried. She had spent years questioning her place in the world, her value, and her potential. And yet here was someone who saw her, not as she appeared, but as she truly was. Someone who challenged her to step into her power, and then guided her through it with patience, precision, and subtlety. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and apprehension. "Now," Arjun replied, "you integrate what you've learned. You apply it to your life. The trials were not just tests, they were mirrors reflecting your strength, your intuition, and your resilience. How you carry yourself moving forward will define the next phase of your journey." Lila nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She realized that this was not the end of her transformation, but a beginning, a foundation upon which she could build a life far more meaningful, confident, and empowered than she had ever imagined. Over the following weeks, Arjun continued to guide her, but in a more subtle manner. She began to notice shifts in herself. Her posture carried authority even in casual settings. Her voice conveyed confidence in meetings. Her instincts were sharper, her perception keener. She started taking risks she would have once avoided, embracing opportunities that required courage and decisiveness. At work, colleagues began to notice a change. The same people who had once overlooked her were now attentive, impressed, and, in some cases, envious. Lila no longer feared scrutiny. Instead, she welcomed challenges, seeing them as opportunities to demonstrate her capabilities. One afternoon, as she prepared for an important presentation to senior management, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Arjun. "Remember, Lila, power is not given, it is claimed. Speak with clarity, act with conviction. I trust you." The simple words filled her with calm determination. She delivered the presentation flawlessly, addressing questions, countering objections, and presenting strategic solutions with confidence and authority. By the time she finished, the room erupted in applause. For the first time, Lila felt the full measure of her growth, not just professional recognition, but personal empowerment. Later that evening, Arjun met her at the Sterling Hotel rooftop once more. The city lights sparkled beneath them, but now Lila's perspective had shifted. She no longer felt small or invisible. Instead, she felt expansive, capable, and fully present in her own power. "You did well today," he said softly, his voice carrying pride without ego. "Thanks to you," she replied, though she knew it was not entirely true. Arjun had guided her, challenged her, and opened doors, but the courage, resilience, and determination she displayed were her own. He shook his head slightly, smiling faintly. "No, you did this yourself. I merely held up a mirror. You discovered the strength that was always within you." Lila's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, doubt, or sorrow, but of gratitude, relief, and exhilaration. For the first time, she felt fully recognized, not just by others, but by herself. "You've transformed," Arjun continued, his tone measured, not in appearance, but in essence. The Lila Sharma who arrived at the reception that night is no longer the same. You are now someone who steps into challenges, embraces opportunity, and commands her own life. Her pulse quickened, not from nerves, but from the sheer magnitude of his words. She realized that the whisper, the invitation, and the trials had not merely been experiences. They had been catalysts, shaping her into a woman capable of owning her space in the world. And Arjun hesitated, his gaze holding a depth she had not anticipated. "I hope you also realize something else." "What?" she asked, heart pounding. "That empowerment is not only personal, it is relational. The connections you form, the people you influence, the guidance you provide to others, all of these are part of your transformation. True strength is never solitary." Lila reflected on his words, realizing that empowerment was indeed a network of influence and insight. She had gained confidence, courage, and clarity, but the next step was to apply it beyond herself, to impact others, to inspire, and to lead. Weeks turned into months, and Lila's transformation became evident in every aspect of her life. She excelled at work, earned the respect of her colleagues, and began mentoring others who, like her, had once been underestimated. She engaged socially with confidence, navigated personal challenges with resilience, and approached life with a newfound sense of purpose. Arjun remained a subtle presence, guiding when needed but never dominating. Their relationship evolved into one of deep trust, mutual respect, and profound understanding. He had entered her life as a stranger, a whisper in a crowded room, and had become a catalyst for her evolution. A figure who encouraged her to discover her own potential rather than define it for her. One evening, on the rooftop where it all began, Lila stood looking out over the city, reflecting on the journey she had undertaken. From the quiet, observant girl at the reception to the empowered woman she had become, the transformation was nothing short of extraordinary. She had faced fear, embraced challenge, and discovered strength she had never known. Arjun joined her silently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are ready," he said softly. "Ready to step fully into your life, to claim your power, and to inspire others. Everything you've learned, it is now yours to wield." Lila turned to him, her eyes bright with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered, not just for his guidance, but for believing in her when she had struggled to believe in herself. He smiled, a rare warmth softening his features. "You didn't need me to believe. You only needed someone to remind you of what was already true." The city stretched endlessly before them, alive with possibility, each light a testament to choices, opportunities, and unseen potential. Lila took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift and the promise of the future surge within her. She realized that life would never be the same, not because of Arjun, not because of circumstance, but because she had claimed her own power. And for the first time in her life, Lila Sharma felt fully, undeniably, and irrevocably transformed. The whisper from a stranger, the invitation, the trials, they had all led to this moment, a life of courage, clarity, and empowerment. She smiled, turning back to Arjun. "I'm ready," she said, her voice strong, confident, and unwavering. And in that moment, the city, the night, and the future seemed to stretch endlessly before her, full of infinite possibilities. Lila Sharma was no longer merely a girl who had sat alone at a reception. She was a woman who had embraced her potential, and nothing would ever be the same again.